Hey guys, welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 5 of Code.org, and today we're going to be talking about variables. And the word variables you've probably heard in math class before, so we're going to talk what variables are when we're talking about computer programming and coding. So here's a question I want you to think about, okay? You don't have to write anything down or anything like that, but here's the question of the day. How can we use variables to store information in our program? So this is a question that as you're going through Lesson 5, you want to keep in the back of your mind. And at the end of Lesson 5, I may have you answer this question. So I want you to think about how can you use variables to store information in your program? So the question is, what is a variable? Well, this lesson is going to introduce variables as a way to label a number in a program or to save a randomly generated value. So you're going to be using variables to save values in the program, and you're gonna see this in action when you're actually doing this. So we're going to have a very basic description of the purpose of a variable and practices using new blocks. Then you're going to be completing a level progression that reinforces a variable as a way to label or name a number. Vocabulary: variable. Well, it's a label for a piece of information used in a program. And when we say label, we mean using words. You're going to be using words, and those words will take the place of numbers. So if you think about a program or an equation in math class, if you say 3x plus 2 equals 14, you have to solve for x. Well, x is a variable, okay? And if you changed one of the numbers, then x would change as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So I'm going to kind of walk you through some of these. There is a video that you need to watch because I am not going to play it right here. It's an introduction to variables. It's about 4 minutes long, but it's part of the program. So you need to watch that video as well. If you have any issues watching, then let me know. Okay, so let's go to the first section here. And what I'm going to do, what I've been doing is I have to start a lot of these over because I've already done them. So I want to kind of start fresh so you guys can see what everything looks like. So remember, if you totally mess up your code, you always go to version history and select over. So this one here doesn't let you run the program until you write an answer in here. And I already wrote the answer in here. Or an answer that I thought. So I looked at the code right here. It says var, which is short form for variable, and you'll see that in the video. Then x position, so somebody wrote an x with a capital P and then position, and they gave it a value, okay? Now the equal sign, you're going to learn about the equal sign in coding in the video after this section. We don't call it an equal sign in coding. It's called an assignment, a value assignment symbol. And you would say var x position gets the value of 50, or gets 50 for short. So we have ellipse, we have an x position, we have 350, 100, 100. Well, we know what these numbers do. This is the x value. This shows us on the grid where across this ellipse is going to show up. It says it's going to show up at the x position. Well, we've told the computer that the x position equals 50. So we know that this circle is going to appear somewhere along this 50 line right here. And it says that the y value is 350. So we're here at 50. We count 100, 200, 300, 400. Well, half of between 300 and 400 is 350. So the circle is going to appear right here. And it says the circle is going to be 100 units tall or wide by 100 units tall. So there's going to be a circle. My prediction is a circle will appear on the bottom left corner that is 100 units across. So if I run my program, there it is. So you get really good, guys, when you start being able to read the code a little bit better. Okay. So the video. The video is good because it gives you an understanding of how we assign values and how we assign numbers to variables, okay? But you have to watch the video in order to do this because I'm not going to explain it to you because Josh explains it just perfectly fine. Then we go up to our skill building activities. And again, guys, in the middle of the week, I will post the solutions to the skill building activities. But you need to try the skill. I mean, even when I post the solutions, you still have to complete them. So they're just a way for you to double check your work. So let's move on to the first skill building activity. Okay, so this one is just making a prediction. So we look at our variables here. We have a variable that they named exposition, and it's 300. We have a variable named what's they, and it's 100. So you basically can name them however you want, okay? And we'll talk about how we name variables in a couple of seconds here, a couple of minutes. So let's go to show grid. Now the ellipse has an x position and a y position. Where is it going to appear? Well, we already know that x position is 300. What's they is 100. So it's going to appear at 300, 100. So we got 100, 200, 300, and then 100. So there's going to be a circle that appears right here. And it's going to be a small circle because they didn't give it a size. So let's run the program. There it is. There's your prediction. Okay. Skill building 5. So this one is talking about naming variables. And there's some text on naming variables. Let's see, right up here. So naming variables. Now let me start this one over because there's a lot of debugging to do in this one. So it starts out with showing you the text and not the blocks. And because there are mistakes in the code, we can't show the blocks. So if I hit show blocks, it says you need to correct an error in your program before it can be shown as blocks. Okay, so let's talk about how you name a variable. So up here it says var size of circle, var one dimension, var y location. Down here, it's going to draw an ellipse and it's going to use those numbers that are represented up here. But there's a problem. There is a problem in all 3 lines of these or 4 lines of these code because they didn't name the variables correctly. So it says here labels can't have spaces. So var size of circle cannot have any spaces in it. So let's go to the helping tips. Naming variables. Now here are some rules for naming variables. And then we're going to use something called camel case. Okay, so labels cannot include spaces. All right, labels cannot begin with a number. And you have to be very careful with spelling because if you spell it wrong when you name the variable, then every place you use that variable in the program, you're going to have to spell it the same way. Okay, variables are case sensitive. Okay, so size written like this in all small letters is not the same as this size or this size. Those are 3 different variables. Okay, you want to use labels that are meaningful. Okay, like if you're writing a program like in the video where you have score and lives, you want to name the variable score. That way when you go back into your code, it makes sense and you can look at it. All right, camel case is when you put a whole bunch of words together, you want to always start the first letter off as small and the second word off with a capital. So if you look here, camel case, it makes it easier to read words when you have them squished together because remember you can't have spaces. So here's a good example. Size of rectangle. Notice how the O and the R are capitalized. Every other word is capitalized using camel case. The reason it's called camel case, if you think of the humps on a camel, that's kind of what it looks like. All right, so that's how you name variables. So we look at this one. This one's easy to fix. We know that there should not be any spaces here, so we need to get rid of those spaces. Okay, so now it says size of circle. This one here, the problem is we cannot have any numbers. So what could we replace the number 1 with? Well, that's easy. We can replace that with the word 1. Okay, so we can go 1, whoop. I'm going to put it on small letters, 1, and then I'm going to put a capital D here because I'm going to use camel case, 1 dimension. Y location. Now this one, there's nothing wrong with this one. This one is perfectly fine. But here's the problem when we go down here, guys, and there's still these warnings. So one dimension, remember, we just changed it. So we have to make them match. So we have to say 1, and then it has to have a capital D. And that fixes that one. This one here, the Y is small, so we have to put the Y as small. Computers are very particular. Size of circle. Now notice I didn't do camel case on size of circle, so I'm going to go back and put a capital O and a capital C, which means I also have to do that up here. So capital O and capital C. All right? And this one obviously has to be the same. Capital O to get rid of the space, capital C. So now that I've fixed up, there are no more mistakes in here. I'm going to hit show blocks. And let's look at this program. So it's going to draw an orange-red circle. It's going to be located at this location, one dimension, so that's 100. Y location, that's 200. So if I look at there's 100, 100, 200. So the circle is going to be here. And the size of the circle is 150. So notice we didn't have to write 150, 150. The size of the circle is just going to be whatever that number is. So if we run the program, there we go. Okay, let's move on. All right, so this one here, and I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to explain how you do it, and then you're going to do it on your own. But this one here, notice the variables. So we have a variable named petal size, and notice how the S is capital, petal size. And we have petal size all down here. So we have 4 ellipses in 4 different locations, okay? Then we have a center. Notice they put labels up here. These are the red petals of the flower, and this is the black circle of the flower. Now we know that the size of the petals is going to be 50, so 50, 50, 50, 50, and so on. So if I run the program, it looks like that. Now, here's what you need to do. You need to change the size of the petals so that these red petals touch each other. So that means you're going to have to change the variable size. There's your hint right there. Okay, and there's more than one answer. You can change it to a bunch of different numbers as long as those red petals are touching each other. All right, so let's move on to the practice ones. So the practice ones there's some debugging. All right, some of them are easy, some of them are a little more challenging. So if we change the variable value, and of course, I'm going to start it over. Okay, so this program uses the variable circle size to control the width and height of the circle. So we can see here the circle is going to be crimson. It's going to be dead center, 200, 200. Remember when we show our grid, 200, 200 is right there. Now the circle size is set at 400. So if I run the program, it makes a complete circle. What they want you to do is they want you to make that circle so big that you can't see the curves of it, and it basically will look like this red square. So that means you have to increase the circle size so that it fills the entire screen. So experiment with the numbers to see what number it's going to take to make that complete. Okay. This one here. This one is a very tricky one, and it actually took me an extra couple of minutes because I wasn't thinking when I did this one. You're going to notice there's a couple of errors here. You want to check the case size. Remember, variables are case sensitive, so it has to be capitals or smalls, and they have to match. So that's kind of your hint for that one. This one here, this one is just a matter of replacing. Now, the thing about this one is the answer, like when you run the program, it's going to look the same no matter what. But this is just showing you something. As soon as it resets itself, I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Okay, so I'm going to run the program, and it's going to show me a bear in the center there. But what I want to do is, see, I created these variables, but then down in the program, I never used them at all. So basically, the ear size, which is 80, I just wrote as 80 down here, but it needs to say ear size. So here's a trick. You can highlight it and copy it, which is Control-C, and you just need to replace all the numbers that are 80 with the variable ear size. And watch this. When I reset it, It looks the exact same, but it gets rid of that little warning here. Now the I size is 15. So when I look down here, I find these 15s for the size. That's for these two little black circles. So I can change that, copy it, Control C. I can go down here, Control V, change those to I size. Now it doesn't change the program, but it gets rid of the error. Okay, if you're going to define a variable, you should be using the variable in your program. And then the last one, wherever you see the number 200, it should be replaced by the word center. So 200, 200, 200, 200, 200. You got to replace that and write in the word center for those ones. Okay. And the last one, this is just bad naming. And I'll show you what we're talking about. This is kind of like the one that we just did as an example. Okay, so remember to name variables. This is not a proper name for a variable. Okay, so remember the rules for a variable. Variable names can't have spaces, they can't start with a number, and capitalization and spelling must be exactly the same. So, shape size, there's a problem with that, and then down here, there's a problem with these. Okay, so you've got to figure that out. Alrighty, let's move on to the assessment. Okay, so this one, and you're going to see this one a couple of times. You're going to see it in lesson 5 as well. All right, so it says run the program to see how it works. So let's run it. And we can see that there is a problem with the I size. The I's should be the same size. So it says change the program to use the I size variable. So let's look. There's the I's. There's our two ellipses for the I's. Now one of them is using I size, but the other one is not. So, I mean, if you're going to create a variable, up here, the left I is 27 units, but this one is not 27 units because we didn't use the variable. We just put the number 10 in there, which makes it a tiny, tiny one. So 10 is smaller than 27. So you've got to figure out what you need to do there. You need to change that second I and use the variable. Okay? And that is lesson 5. So I am going to post the solutions, all of the solutions for lesson 5 in the middle of the week. You guys that are working remotely, if you have any questions for me on Wednesday, send me an email, request Zoom time, or whatever you need to do to get in touch with me. But you have to initiate a contact with me. So I'm not going to just keep Zoom open all day. But if you need help, I'm more than happy to take the time to help whoever needs help. Okay, you guys that I'm going to see on Monday and Thursday. You guys, if you're a Thursday kid, if you're a B kid, you better be watching this video too, because when you come back on Thursday, we're going to be doing lesson 6. All right? Good luck.